Over half a century ago, measles was as common as a cold. It affected somewhere between 300,000 and 400,000 people a year. It caused about 5,000 hospitalizations and 50 to 75 deaths. Today, though, measles is still a huge issue. It affects 20 million people globally. It is the leading cause of blindness and deafness, and it causes about 140,000 deaths per year. But if you're one of the fortunate people to live in somewhere like Canada or America, measles shouldn't be a problem. It shouldn't even be a concern. See, a few years ago, a vaccine was created called MMR, which stands for measles, mumps, and rubella. This vaccine is almost 100% effective. 2 doses and you're pretty much guaranteed to never get measles. It was so effective that the World Health Organization declared measles completely eradicated from both Canada and America after 12 uninterrupted months with no diagnosis of measles. Yes, measles was eradicated for an entire year. So why did it come back? A lack of knowledge is the answer. On February 28, 1999, The Lancet published a paper called, and stick with me through this, it's very long, A lymphoid nodular hypoplasmia, nonspecific colloidal and pervasive development disorder in children. It was published by gastroenterologist Andrew Wakefield and his associates. They studied 12 children who all had bowel disorder and had claimed to have started having behavioral abnormalities after taking the MMR vaccine. The conclusion of the paper was that the MMR vaccine caused autism, but more specifically, in children who had bowel disorder. Dr. Wakefield said that the MMR vaccine was very dangerous and should be immediately taken off the market. As you can imagine, the media and parents went nuts. It's very important to understand that this was at a time when autism rates were soaring. Parents were tired of seeing their children become pushpins for vaccinations, and a brand new tool called the internet was booming. Scientists everywhere immediately started working to reproduce his findings. None of them could. Over time, it became extremely clear that his research was flawed ethically and scientifically. It turns out that the children that were chosen for the study were handpicked by Dr. Wakefield. Yes. In a scientific investigation, the lead researcher picked and chose the people that would participate in his research in order to prove his thesis. Yes. None of it was really that true, and I'll show you why. Of the 12 children that were there, 11 of their parents had already blamed the MMR vaccination for their behavioral abnormalities. And despite the claim that all 12 children were completely normal before getting the MMR vaccination, there's documented evidence that that is not true. Yes, there was evidence that they had issues before the MMR vaccination. Dr. Wakefield just chose to ignore that fact and say, no, they started after. Also, for 9 of the participants, the children didn't actually even have bowel disorder. He falsified their medical documents. He wrote that they did when they really didn't. Yes, a practicing doctor faked medical records in order to prove a thesis and make everyone scared of MMR vaccinations. Now you might wonder why he would do something like this. Well, let me understand something to you. He was working for a lawyer named Richard Barr, who had previously planned a class action lawsuit against the creators of the MMR vaccination. Andrew Wakefield was their key witness. He was their number one. They were going to run the case based on his testimony, his time, his research paper. Do you know how much he was charging? $260 an hour. Yes, he was making them pay him $260 per hour to testify on a paper that was entirely falsified. And Richard Barr, the lawyer who was in charge of the case, well, 2 years prior to the Lancet publishing their paper, he wrote a letter to his clients looking for children with bowel disorder and autism. They pick and chose the people they wanted to participate in their trial to go through with this class action lawsuit. The tragic thing about all of this, though, is the amount of children that didn't get vaccinated because of this paper. Because a doctor who swore on Hippocrates' oath to never do any harm and protect society, lied and harmed so many innocent people. Yes. Rates in Britain for getting the measles vaccination fell to 80%. Yes, that's how low it fell. 22 cases of measles had been discovered in Canada as of February 2015. So many innocent people are being affected by a disease that was at one point eradicated until this paper came out. The tragic thing about it, though, is there's a lot of children in Alice that can't get vaccinated. They can't get vaccinated because their doctors, who have their best interests in mind, say they can't. They tell them, don't get vaccinated. It's going to do you more harm than good. So they don't. And you know what? They would have been okay. If they lived in Canada or America, they would have been fine because the disease wasn't prevalent. It wasn't around anymore. They weren't going to contract it. They were okay. But now, that's not an option for them anymore. Because people have chosen to stop vaccinating their children. Not only does that affect the people who can't get vaccinated, it's affecting their own children. The vaccine isn't going to cause autism. The children are going to be fine, unless, of course, they get measles and end up blind or deaf or dead, which are all possibilities and all side effects of getting measles. Yes. So the next time you hear Jenny McCarthy on TV talking about how vaccinations are so bad and vaccination causes measles, please turn it off and walk away. It's not true. It's never been true. Any reliable medical source will tell you it's not true. So turn it off. Because vaccinations are good. Vaccinations help people. Vaccinations, they save lives.